Welcome to the Physician's Guide to Financial Wellness, the podcast dedicated to helping physicians in Michigan turn their professional success into financial success while enjoying life along the way. And now, here are your hosts, Andrew Mushbaugh and Trent DeBruin.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Physician's Guide to Financial Wellness. This is Trent DeBruin, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Andrew Mushbaugh. And today we're going to talk about your financial vital signs. And we promise not to make any cliche references like comparing your blood pressure to your savings rate. But the concept of vital signs is obviously familiar to our listeners. And when it comes to personal finance, the idea is these indicators not only give a good snapshot of where you're at today with your financial life and identify potential areas of concern, but they also give you a baseline from which you can then assess progress and improvement over time. And Andrew, I guess it's kind of like our golf scores and how they unfortunately give the accurate snapshot that neither of us is very good at golf, but our hope is that by practicing and doing the right things, we can improve those scores over time.
Yeah, I think we're both just trying to figure out how to do the whole progress and improvement part.
Yeah, there's always next season for us.
I hope.
So for our discussion today, we're going to focus on three specific vital signs. One of them is tangible and easy to quantify, one of them is softer and more subjective, and the third is somewhat of a mix of the two. And we'll start with the most specific one, which is net worth.
Yeah, this is a good one to start with because if there's one number that best captures a snapshot of your overall financial situation, it's your net worth. And your net worth is defined as your assets minus your liabilities. In other words, it's what you own minus what you owe. Assets include things like your retirement accounts, other investment accounts, bank accounts, college savings accounts, or your home and car. And liabilities are things like a mortgage, student loans, car loans, or monthly credit card statements. And we like to track your net worth because it's a simple equation and helps to see the big picture. For example, if you have $1 million of investments, but $1 million of debt, the honest assessment is that you're worse off, at least at this point in time, than someone with $5,000 of investments and no debt. It's also helpful, especially for physicians early in their career, because you'll get credit for being smart about paying back those student loans earlier instead of just solely focused on saving and investing more. There are a lot of different ways that you can grow your net worth, which we'll touch on a few of those. But at the most basic level, you either pay down debt or increase your assets. And looking purely at increasing your assets, the easiest way is to simply save more money, whether that's to a bank account, retirement account, investment account, or somewhere else. And when thinking about how to save more money, there are essentially two options. You can increase your income or reduce your spending. Now, that's obviously easier said than done, but some physicians have more flexibility and options than others in terms of increasing income. But we all have the ability to make decisions about how much we spend and on what. Another good way to grow your net worth is by having your money make more money. In other words, instead of earning 0% with cash sitting in your bank, you earn a return of your money by investing it. Investing tends to be the biggest driver of growing your net worth, especially over time as the power of compounding starts working for you. For example, if you look at saving for retirement and the amount of money a typical physician has at the time of retirement, much more of that portfolio value comes from the growth of the money as opposed to the actual dollars saved during the 20 or 30 years of their career. And with investing, your rate of return on your money, or how quickly your money grows, will depend on how it's invested and what the stock and bond markets do over time. And we have an episode devoted to this, episode 5, that talks about investing and the key principles to understand. But we always add the caveat that you shouldn't try to make up for your lack of savings with above average returns, because too often this results in you not even earning average returns. And the main takeaway here is that investing is one of the best ways to grow your net worth over time. While there's no guarantee that the future will be similar to the past, historically money invested in the stock market has grown much faster than money invested in the bond market, which has grown much faster than money just sitting in a bank account. So in summary, the two biggest components of growing the assets part of your equation is by saving more and investing. Now looking at the other way to grow your net worth is by reducing your liabilities or paying down debt. And when it comes to paying down debt, it's important to understand that debt itself isn't necessarily good or bad. It really depends on what type of debt you have and how you use it or how much of it you take on. With that in mind, we like to make the distinction between good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is generally debt that's used to purchase something that won't appreciate in value and also has a high interest rate, like a credit card. And good debt, on the other hand, is debt that's used to purchase something that's expected to appreciate in value and or has a low interest rate. For example, student loans to pay for education, it's going to increase your future earning potential, or a mortgage to buy a house that you know is going to appreciate in value over time. So don't think that all debt is necessarily good or bad and it must be paid off as soon as possible. If you have bad debt, like credit card debt, then yes, it almost always makes sense to pay it off as soon as you can. However, when it comes to managing your finances and growing your net worth, while it's a simple equation, the harder part is deciding on the balance between paying down debt and saving and investing. When thinking through this and trying to figure out the right balance for you, we'll discuss it purely from a financial perspective to stay on topic, but we always like to remind people that not every decision has to be the optimal financial decision, as long as you make an intentional decision based on the trade-offs you're comfortable with. For some physicians, paying off student loans aggressively just helps to get the monkey off your back, or it may feel better to pay ahead on your mortgage, even if it's not the optimal long-term decision, just purely from a financial perspective. So going back to the idea of looking at this balance from a financial perspective, it always comes down to looking at what's the best use of the money and cash flow that you have. For example, if you have a mortgage at 3%, you'd expect to earn a higher return than that over the long term by investing. So rather than paying off that debt faster than required, the best approach, at least based on historical returns, would be to instead use that extra money toward investing to earn a higher return and subsequently grow your net worth even faster. However, outside of looking purely at what gives you the best chance to have a higher net worth in the future, we often find that a balanced approach tends to work best, where you're saving and investing while also making progress and paying debt down faster than required, and some combination of the two. And one last point to mention is that few people know how to celebrate having a $0 net worth more than physicians, because that likely means they're either close to paying off their student loans or have already paid them off. So it's important to have the right context early in your career. While net worth is a good barometer of your financial situation, having a low or negative net worth doesn't inherently mean you've done something wrong with your finances, given the future earning potential that you have. Having said that, the reality is most physicians are having to play catch-up, given the delayed start to saving and investing and an average of $200,000 worth of student loan balance coming out of med school, which makes tracking your net worth especially important early on in your career to make sure that you make up for that lost time and that higher student loan balance.
Yeah, for all the physicians in training or in early years as attendings, we always encourage you to see the big picture in your income trajectory to avoid being discouraged by your loan balance or a negative net worth if you have one. We've helped younger physicians all the way through those making the retirement transition, and you'll be amazed by what you can achieve at that point if you just start or continue doing the right things now and let those efforts add up over the next 20 or 30 years.
Absolutely. It's the power of compounding in action. It's actually pretty funny to see both sides surprised. Early in your career, the idea of having multiple $1 million retirement account balances is hard for some people to wrap their heads around. Yet those near or close to retirement often are equally surprised at how much the years of saving and investing have really added up.
So we started with net worth, which is the most tangible financial vital sign. But the next one we're going to discuss is a bit of a mix between quantitative measures and the softer side of things, and that's progress toward your goals. Now, if you listen to other episodes of the podcast, you've heard us talk about goals a lot. And the reason goals are so important is because if you don't know where you ultimately want to be or what you want to achieve, at least a rough idea of it, it's really hard to put together a plan for getting there and knowing what steps you need to take along the way, and if necessary, how to make adjustments between now and then. And we always recommend breaking down goals by time period, long-term, medium-term, and short-term, and prioritizing them by importance, since for most people, it's not possible to do everything you want all at once, so you need to prioritize. But assuming you've gone through the process of setting and prioritizing your goals, you'll know how much you need to be saving each year for each of those goals. The other nice part of knowing what's required to save each year is that it provides clarity about whether or not you're on track. If you're saving enough to meet those goals and are comfortable with the plan, that frees you up to either spend more today guilt-free or accelerate how much you save toward other goals. That being said, we all know that life changes over time and priorities shift, so another important aspect of tracking progress toward your goals is periodically revisiting them to see whether any adjustments are needed. For example, when thinking about saving for college, you may have originally been planning for your child to go to a private school, but over time, you or they decide that an in-state public school would be better instead. Well, that dramatically changes the cost as well as the amount you need to save each year, so you want to incorporate that and adjust how much you're saving toward future college costs. Another common change is when you want to retire or become financially independent. Maybe you initially were planning to retire at age 65, but after working for a decade, you decide that you'd instead like to be able to retire at age 60. Or perhaps you're assuming a certain rate of return for your investments, but the markets perform much better or worse than expected, and you either need to save more for retirement, or you can scale back on how much you need to save each year. Another reason to continuously track and revisit goals is that over time, your goals will change, and you'll want to rethink and reprioritize how you're using your cash flow each year between paying down debt versus saving and investing. For example, if you're earlier in your career, maybe you finally paid off your student loans or saved enough for the down payment for your forever home. Once you fund your savings goal or pay off debt, that means you no longer need to allocate money toward those things each year, so you suddenly have cash flow that's freed up for other uses. When that happens, you have options and can decide how to allocate it. Maybe you want to accelerate your progress towards some of your remaining goals, like retirement or financial independence, by increasing how much you save toward them. Or perhaps you're already saving enough toward your other goals to comfortably reach them on the timeline you want, and you instead decide to spend more today. The point is, by tracking progress toward your goals and revisiting them over time, it makes it much easier to continuously optimize the way you're using your financial resources. Ensure that you're on track to meet your goals, and strike a balance of also enjoying your money along the way. And at this point, you might be thinking, that all makes sense and sounds good in theory, but how do I actually do it in practice? So while we use financial planning software for our clients to track things like retirement projections, college savings projections, and progress toward other goals, we know not everyone wants to go out and pay thousands of dollars for software. If you're doing this yourself, even if you don't have access to that same level of detail, you can still track these things approximately with a little bit of legwork. There are free calculators online for things like retirement or college savings, so you'll need to enter some assumptions and numbers, but by doing that, you can at least get a ballpark idea of where you are and how much you need to be saving each year. And as we've mentioned, the point is to revisit this each year. So even if your starting point is a rough approximation, you can continue to hone things year after year. And for other goals like paying off student loans or saving for a down payment, it's easy to track and monitor your progress there, even without any sophisticated tools. One of the biggest takeaways here is that financial planning and the process of managing your own finances isn't a set it and forget it situation. Life is fluid, there are a ton of variables involved, and things are constantly changing. So if you want to maximize the probability of achieving the goals you have in your financial life, it's important to track your progress and make those adjustments along the way.
Yeah, and even just looking at my own personal situation, there have been a lot of changes over the past few years between starting our firm, saving for a down payment, starting to save for college for Grant, all while ensuring I'm still maximizing my tax advantage retirement accounts.
Wait, I thought the college savings plan for Grant was getting a D1 athletic scholarship.
Yeah, no, that's still the plan, but just in case, the 529 plan is still the backup in the very unlikely scenario his D1 career doesn't actually pan out.
Yeah, it's good to have that plan B. But yeah, life definitely changes and goals change, and with baby number 4 on the way, Jen and I are getting ready to add another college savings goal to the list, so we're also living this firsthand.
Yeah, the fun just keeps coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't have it any other way.
All right, the last key area to monitor is definitely the least tangible of the three, but it's just as important as the others, and that's overall financial wellness. And while we know talking about financial wellness or your relationship with money likely isn't something you're talking about on date night, it can make a big difference in striking the balance of saving enough for the future while better enjoying things along the way.
Yeah, anything related to finance or even financial wellness is definitely off limits for Jen and my date nights.
Exact same for us, so funny how that works. Joking aside, this is an important area to understand and is really why we love doing what we do. Because understanding this idea of financial wellness is where people really start to have peace of mind around their finances, which is ultimately our goal. In basic terms, we describe financial wellness as having peace of mind around the decisions you make as it pertains to your finances and feeling content with the way you're using your financial resources relative to your values and goals. There are several different aspects of this, but the first step is having the context of where you are today relative to the goals you have in the future. For example, if you're saving $120,000 per year, it's hard to know if that's saving enough or not enough for your future goals. It may be enough if you retired at 60, but not enough if you retired at 50. By understanding what your current trajectory looks like, it turns an arbitrary amount of what you're saving into something tangible you can track of either on target or not. And once you have the proper context of your current path, you can decide if you want to make any changes. This is where trade-offs come into play and where you can make adjustments if necessary. Using the example of saving $120,000 per year and wanting to retire at 50, you may realize that you need to save an extra $30,000 a year to hit that goal. From there, you can look at the trade-offs between spending less each year to increase your savings, save less towards other goals, or potentially push retirement back a couple years. There's no right or wrong answer here, and not every decision has to be the financially optimal decision, but every decision should be intentional based on the trade-offs you are comfortable with. And having the proper context and making intentional decisions is one of the best ways toward having peace of mind around your finances because it helps provide a feeling of control on your decisions. It can also be quite eye-opening if you're on either end of the extreme, saving so much at the expense of enjoying life along the way, or spending too much at the expense of your future plans. By having this clarity, you can either feel confident that you can take that extra trip, buy that triple latte with almond milk from Starbucks every day, or do the home renovation. On the flip side, if you're not saving enough, it gives you time to make changes as opposed to having an unwelcome surprise in the future. However, that's just step one of having clarity, but the harder part is psychologically changing your natural tendencies. I'm sure some of you know, or at least have heard of, that person who has $10 million but only buys items that are on sale and stays at motels on vacation. And this is especially true as people make that transition into retirement, where there's a lot more going on than simply flipping the switch of saving to their accounts to withdrawing from their accounts. It's one thing to quote unquote know you can retire, and another thing to actually internalize what that means and feel comfortable on a day-to-day basis. And because people don't ever really pause to think about how they think about money, It's often you just acting on autopilot out of habits that have developed over time. Going even further, it typically goes back to your earliest experiences with money, which is why we love the question of, tell us about your earliest experience with money, or what was money like for you growing up? Answering these questions helps to learn more about your money script, which we just described as your relationship with money and how you view financial decisions. This could be from a scarcity mindset, or you may never have had to think about money growing up, or anywhere else across that spectrum. Once you have clarity on your trajectory and awareness on your money script, you can start to make progress on reversing some of those old habits or tendencies that may be causing stress. So that's a high-level overview of how to work toward improving your overall financial wellness, but everyone is different and unique with different triggers that add stress to their life. And to drill down into some more of the specific areas and tangible things to consider or do when it comes to improving your financial life, I'll touch on a few of the most common. The first one is that humans all like the feeling of being in control and making progress. So the stress comes into play when you don't feel like you're organized, making progress, or just in general in control of managing your finances. To combat this, having the proper context and tracking your net worth and progress towards your goals brings back a sense of control while also looking at the progress you've made over time. And the second big area of stress is around investing and how comfortable you feel with the stock market and your investments. And different people have different investment temperaments, aka how stressed or not they feel seeing their investment values fluctuate with the stock and bond market. There are many different types of stress around investing. Bad timing with your investments, picking the wrong investment, missing out on returns, or just unsure how to even go about investing in the first place. But stepping back, the real stress isn't temporarily seeing your investments down, but what that means for your future lifestyle. In retirement, it could be the fear of running out of money. If you're approaching retirement, the fear may be that you have to work a little longer or spend less. And not to make a drinking game out of the word context, but the most helpful way to minimize stress around investing is if you understand what the impact of a 20% decline in the stock market means for your day-to-day living or meeting future goals. If a temporary decline doesn't impact your ability to meet your current or future lifestyle, then that context can help alleviate the stress from the unpredictability of the stock market in the short run. Another important way to help with stress around investing is to match your investment mix of stocks and bonds to your temperament or comfort level. This will be unique to each person, but as you get closer to retirement, having more in bonds results in smaller day-to-day fluctuations. And we like to describe finding the right mix of stocks and bonds for you as a swan portfolio, or sleep well at night. So if you're someone who is stressed by the market fluctuations, perhaps that means having a higher percentage invested in bonds, which tends to be more stable, than someone the same age with similar goals. Just keep in mind that there's a trade-off involved, and more stability, by having less invested in stocks, will likely mean lower investment returns over time. So you may need to save more, save longer, just to be able to reach your goals. And like we mentioned, thinking about financial wellness here is about balancing the financially optimal decision with enjoying life along the way. And we use the word balance a lot to keep the focus on the big picture perspective and not sacrificing everything now for some future goal. So if you're saving for financial independence, perhaps that means moving back your target age a few years rather than living a bare bones lifestyle between now and then just to achieve that goal. Or if you're saving for college, maybe that means taking an extra family vacation while the kids are still in the house, even if that means a little less in the college fund and more cost that you have to cover out of pocket. And going back to the idea of different money scripts, different people place different values on different things. Some people may like a large cash cushion. Others dislike debt. Some like to take on more risk with investing. And the biggest one is often around spending and retirement, where it varies the most. So the last key takeaway is the idea of not comparing your situation to your neighbors, because managing your own financial life and wellness is a personal decision. And I know I gave a lot of examples here, but hopefully it was helpful to shine some light on the softer sides of managing your financial life in addition to just the pure dollars and cents. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter if you're objectively doing well with your finances by numerical standards if you don't feel good about your money and overall financial life.
Yeah, this one is often overlooked, but as you can see, it's just as important as the others. So that covers it for the 3 financial vital signs we wanted to discuss. Obviously, there are a lot more things that you can measure and track when it comes to your finances, but we believe these are 3 of the most important ones, and focusing on them is extremely valuable, not only in terms of understanding the current picture of your financial life, but also measuring and making progress over time. And to summarize the 3 financial vital signs we covered, number 1 is net worth. So this is the difference between what you own and what you owe, and it's the best measure of wealth, and you want to focus on growing it over time by growing your assets, saving more, and having your money make money by investing, and also reducing your debt. Number 2 is progress toward your goals. This starts with going through the process of actually defining and quantifying your goals, but once you've done that, you'll want to actively track your progress year after year since life changes, and you want to know what adjustments you need to make in order to keep on track. And lastly, number 3 is financial wellness. So focus on having the right context and perspective so you can make intentional decisions based on what's important to you. And if something about your finances is causing you stress, or there's a misalignment between how you're using your financial resources and what's truly important to you, it's worth taking the time to dig a little deeper to understand what can help remove that stress. Well, hopefully this is helpful for everyone. I know there are a lot of moving parts here, and these are all things that Andrew and I continue to wrestle with and focus on in our own financial lives. So know that you're definitely not alone. Well, thank you all for joining us for another episode of the show. If you want to check out the show notes, you can find them at mdwmllc.com/podcast. And as always, you're also welcome to email us at info@mdwmllc.com if you have thoughts to share or questions that you'd like to have answered. Take care, everyone, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Want even more ideas, tools, and resources on how to make smart financial decisions? Check out the resources section of MD Wealth Management's website at mdwmllc.com, where you'll find additional knowledge and insight from Michigan physicians, including a blog, ebook, and one-page guides. While there, you can also schedule a 15-minute conversation with Andrew and Trent to learn more about what it means to work with the firm and how they serve physicians. If you've enjoyed the content, please leave a review on iTunes and share with your friends and colleagues. Thanks so much for listening. Andrew Mushbaugh and Trent DeBruin are certified financial planners, principals, and co-founders of MD Wealth Management, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Michigan. All opinions shared in the show are for general information and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future returns. Please consult with your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before making any decisions.